So good morning. The title of my talk this morning is The Power of Thought, Holy What? To have this conversation, the very first thing that I must say is that our thoughts, of course, are very important. They have an impact on our own life experience. And I'm going to talk about that. But I'm also going to speak about the fact that our thoughts also have a deep connection and a key role to play in the collective consciousness that we are all a part of. Our thoughts are a critical piece of both the micro and the macro experience of life on this planet. And in thinking about this idea, in my own journey, I had a pivotal moment where a new thought changed the trajectory of my own life. I remember a couple of decades ago, I found myself in a New Thought church, and I'd been going for a few months. And the inner temperature of my own thought patterns were incredibly negative, like a gazillion minus zero negative was what was going on with my own personal inner dialogue back then. It was a steady dose for me of not enoughness, thoughts of lack, of fear, lots of fear, fear of failure, fear of success, a lot of fear. My inner critic, I can absolutely say to you, owned the building I was inhabiting in my body temple, and she was a really harsh landlord. And then the day came, and I am so glad I went to church that morning, because it was the first time that I heard my minister tell the congregation, I remember exactly where I was sitting that day. He said, despite everything, this is actually a loving universe. And then he took it a step further and he said, and this entire loving universe has your back. So I had never heard in my entire life in church anything like that, much less in life. This idea, I was so stunned by that the whole universe was conspiring to support me, so that for me, coming from my Catholic background, logic followed that the truth was that I was actually an original blessing, not an original sin. Whew, it was huge for me. It meant that there was an energy in the ethers. It meant that the air that I breathed loved me. It loved me just as I was. I didn't have to prove my worthiness. I didn't have to hustle, as Brene Brown says, for my worthiness. It was just this universe that loved me. It simply was. And I remember that day sitting exactly where I was in that sanctuary. And after that minister, my senior minister said that, everything after that sounded like the grown-ups in like the Snoopy cartoons. Because I was wrapping my head around this concept. And I realized that moment, through pure grace, I had been given the gift of the possibility that I was unconditionally loved by the whole universe for who I was, the way I was. And I couldn't stop the tears. From those days, I cried a lot in church. I couldn't stop those tears from streaming down my face. And I began to do the work. I began to do the work to completely shift my purview of how I saw the world and my place in it, because this whole idea blew my mind. I took class after class, as Terry so beautifully shared. I did that too. I didn't stop. It was so powerful for me, because as soon as I was able to begin to change my thinking about some of these really important, critical pieces, I realized that I was not the victim of the whims of some moody, angry God. In fact, despite what I had gone through just being a human being in female form living on the planet, I was actually at choice. I could be in reaction mode, which is how I lived most of my life. I could be in reaction mode to the world around me, thereby contributing to more negativity on the planet, or I could be in response mode, thereby contributing to more peace on the planet. And it was totally up to me. The more I studied New Thought philosophy, the more I learned the practical tools that changed my life. And I stand here today to share with all of you that the way that I think now is the polar opposite. I think about that sweet girl that I was and that pain that I was in most of the time. And it feels like a recent past life, you know? I think about my life up into the day before that very important day in Los Angeles in that sweet church that still means so much to me. If you are interested in making your life better and making the world better, the fact is we can't do it. We can't create a new future for ourselves or the world if we are living from negative thought patterns of the past. We can't do it. We will never have peace in the world if we are posting and screaming hate towards the perceived other. It simply will not happen. All right, so given all of that, how do we do this? How do we do it? We start with ourselves. Now, doing our own inner work is sometimes misconstrued as self-absorbed by some people who are not familiar with the scope and the depth and the grace of this teaching. But here's what I want you to know. Every single ancient tradition that I can think of, every single one starts from within. A life grounded in God or spirit begins with the journey of the heart. It doesn't matter what tradition or religion or spiritual path you follow. Otherwise, it's simply an ungrounded intellectual exercise built on sand. It starts with us. Speaking of things built on sand, I want to just say to you that if anyone tells you to just think happy thoughts, that is absurd, that is cruel, that is metaphysical malpractice, that is a spiritual bypass, and that is not what we teach. It is not what we have ever taught. The so-called spiritual high vibe culture that we see sometimes in the new agey kind of self-help circles that encourages that nonsense can be very damaging. And it is the opposite of the ground we walk and what we teach here. So, people ask me a lot. They ask me, okay, but Rev Shans, what do I do with the negative thoughts and the beliefs that I have? They also ask me, what do I do about these negative thoughts and how does that affect the whole world? It's a great question. So let me start by saying we all have negative thoughts from time to time. We're all human, and here's the thing. Experts tell us that our mind thinks between, and there's some discrepancy here, but it's between 50,000 and 80,000-ish thoughts per day-ish. It's a lot. And a lot of those thoughts that we have are negative. So today I want to give us an opportunity to learn how, especially in the climate we're in right now, to respond to our negative thoughts, which over time will help us create new neural pathways and rewire our brains so that we can create the inner field of spaciousness and possibility as our go-to rather than negativity as our default. Are you with me? All right, so I'm going to say that one more time. We can create, through these spiritual tools for personal transformation, we can create the inner field of spaciousness and possibility as our go-to rather than negativity and as our default. So primarily, negative thoughts become a problem when we ignore them or we push them down. When something hurts us, it's the human instinct to want to move away from it. So be gentle with yourselves here. That's a human instinct that we have. However, that will turn toxic. It will wreak havoc. Because when we push those negative thoughts away or feelings away, when we push them away, this is the moment when we develop judgment about them. And once we have developed a judgment about them, it's much harder to get back on track. And so even though we want to push away those negative thoughts because they don't feel good, New Thought, ancient wisdom, teaches something that may feel a bit antithetical. And that is, when something hurts our heart, the invitation is to go into the feeling rather than to run away from it. Buddhists teach that the only way out is in. If we can sit with our discomfort, our fear, our sadness, our anger, it will give us something that we are meant to know. It will teach us something valuable about ourselves if we can just take a breath and be with it. And I have to say, this goes against much of what our culture teaches right now, doesn't it? You know, numb it, take a pill, be busy, right? The invitation here is to just sit with that feeling, to be with it. It's okay. It takes courage, loves. I get that. I get that it takes courage. And I love what Anne Lamott says about that. She says, courage is fear that has said its prayers. So it's a good thing we pray a lot here. You know, we can be courageous together. And we teach this very thing in metaphysics. What you resist will always persist. I love what Ralph Waldo Emerson said about this. He said, if a dog is chasing you, stop and whistle for it. If a dog is chasing you, a thought form is trying to get your attention, stop and whistle for it. Come on, honey, I'm right here. Talk to me. So I'm going to invite you the next time a negative thought comes up for you. You don't have to whistle. I'm a terrible whistler. That's all I got. So I won't be whistling, but I'm going to invite you to, instead of turn away from the negative thought, take a breath and simply and gently ask that negative thought, what are you here to teach me? What are you here to teach me? This creates the spaciousness within you to invite the thought without judgment to be of service to you. Do you see? We subscribe to this idea that this, in fact, is a loving universe, despite the humanness and all that is happening in the world of effect, in the divine matrix that we all live in here, this force of love is always for us. And so whatever it is that is coming up from within us is coming up for our highest and best, for our betterment. It might not look that way or feel that way, but it is coming up to get our attention, to serve us, to support us. So this one question to the negative thoughts, what are you here to teach me, honey? Back again. All right, teach me. What is this? What is this? This does wonders. And you can do this anywhere you are at any time. No one will know. Even maybe if something comes up for you on the drive home, you can, on the road, lovingly bless someone on the road, and then just ask, what is this for me? What am I to know about this? Teach me. So there's something called, if you're not familiar with this, the Chandra X-ray Observatory. And it is a flagship class space telescope that was launched aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia in 1999. And its sole mission was to detect invisible fields of energy in the universe. Greg Braden talks about this idea a lot, and I love it. Scientists used to think that space was up to 90% empty. That's what we used to think. Well, now we know that there is a lot of energy in the universe. With this X-ray technology, we can now actually see the energy. It looks like a web or a net. We can actually see it. And this discovery is leading scientists to question what the ancients talked about thousands of years ago, and that is, what is the connection, the direct connection between the energy particles that make us up as humans and the direct correlation of the energy in the universe, the cosmos? How are we connected? What is so beautiful in what we are learning, what science is now finally able to explain to us in scientific terms, is that we are all connected. We are all aligned with this field of energy. So follow this thought then. Being aligned with this field of energy, we are connected in thought to everything and everyone. When we talk about oneness, we're not only talking about human beings, we're talking about the cosmos. Now, and people say to me, gosh, I'm feeling so much right now. Well, no wonder. No wonder we're all truly connected. And I want to take a moment and say that for those of you who may be grieving the state that our planet is in right now, I invite you to remember that the only way out is in, to be with the grief. And you might want to consider having support while you do that, praying with a practitioner after service, or maybe setting up a session with them, a spiritual coaching session. Know that you have support here. Okay? So I know that there is a lot going on right now, and how do we handle it in the collective? How do we navigate the feelings and the thoughts of others that are rippling to us? So first we do our work. The fact that you chose to be here in spiritual community this morning is evidence that you are doing that. Congrats. It's good. You may also consider taking a class, talking to a friend, seeing a practitioner, whatever it is, to continue doing your own work. Because again, it's easy to get overwhelmed with everything that is going on. But here's something I want to suggest to you. The way that I personally navigate the collective negativity is to, first of all, absolutely look at it. We used to teach back in the day to ignore news reports, that it would, put us in a bad mood. I have completely had a new thought about that. When I watch the news at night, that is one gigantic prayer request. And it is my responsibility, my civic duty and my responsibility as a global citizen to know what is going on, to be informed, so that I can do my inner work, so that I can do my outer work and bring love and light into the world. So again, remembering that despite everything, this is a loving universe. Remembering that we are not at the mercy of anything. Life is going to do what life does. Life is not going to stop happening. And know that we are always, whatever is happening, at choice in any given situation, how we're going to respond to it. This is the grace of free will. We get to decide how we will handle, navigate, and deal with our time on the planet. We can either learn from it, we can participate in the healing of it, or not. I suggest we do. I suggest we lead with love. Wendell Berry said, "I believe that the world was created and approved by love, that it subsists, coheres, and endures by love, that insofar it is redeemable, it can be redeemed only by love." The ancient Essenes talked about the concept of beauty. We have notes up there. Rand, can you take those off? I'm not there yet, honey. I'm getting there. Thank you. The ancient Essenes talked about the concept of beauty being everywhere, even in the hard places, in the tricky places, in the difficult places. And there's a story about Mother Teresa that I love that's connected to this, who herself was a human being like all of us. And as the story goes, she would walk the streets of Calcutta. Very, very, very difficult, challenging. She would see bodies on the ground, decay, but she would also notice out of the dung on the ground, a small flower would grow out of that. And that was the beauty. That was the beauty. And that beauty reminded her of the grace of spirit and gave her strength to go on. And I believe this is a wonderful tool for us. For us. That even in the midst of negativity, we can choose to see beauty. It's in the helpers, it's in the babies, it's in nature, it's in the doggies and the kitties, and it's in spiritual community. We can choose to see beauty, and it helps us shine light into the dark places. Of course, we must address as a people the pain. Hear me when I say that. How many times have you heard me say we must name it to transcend it? We address that, but we can also choose to find and see the beauty. That is how we're going to get through this. So this week, now Rand, thank you, love. So this week, I invite you to consider the following. When something hurts your heart, rather than pushing it away, go into the feeling and notice what happens. That's the first thing. Secondly, the next time a negative thought comes up for you, ask it, what are you here to teach me? And finally, even in the midst of negativity, choose to find the beauty. It is there. And seeing this beauty wherever we can find it will give us the strength to then take our tender, loving hearts that may very well be hurting right now and go out into the world and be a part of the solution so that we can together help to create a world that works for everyone. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.